In this video, I want to go over an antivirus program for Linux users known as the ClamAV antivirus program. Now, in the past, I have went over ClamAV, but I covered the ClamTK, which is the graphical user interface, for those of you that like the point-and-click method. And this is when I showed you it was 6.2 at the time, and since then they've updated to 6.06. So I did update the links. You can still install the 6.02 and it will work, but to get the most current version, you can install this. But let me close this and go to the Clamscan that I'm going to focus on in this video. Now, Clamscan is the command line antivirus scanner that scans your files and directories for viruses, trojans, and other type of programs that can harm your system. And you can click the ClamAV link to actually go to the developer's website. As you can see, it says ClamAV is an open source antivirus engine for detecting trojans, viruses, malware, and other malicious threats. And you can download the program from here and install it on your system. You can install ClamAV for multiple platforms. It will work in Windows and Linux and Mac operating systems. As you can see here, ClamAV is an open source standard for mail gateway scanning software. So most Linux are used for Linux mail servers. So when you put this on here, it will scan your mail and detect whether or not you got any malicious content within your mail or in attachments. But you can also install it on Linux operating system. It's very high performance and it's very versatile. You can scan over a large variety of different type of file formats. Now, before I explain how to install it or how to use it, let me explain why I'm going over this. Last week, I was contacted by my card company that I use to purchase things online with, and someone or several individuals across the United States was trying to purchase things from Walmart using my account and my card number. And it was flagged because it was so close together that they knew it wasn't me because I'm on the eastern part of the United States. And this was like in the midsection and western part of the United States. Someone from Texas, New Mexico, and California tried to purchase a lot of things using my actual Walmart account. And so they flagged it, and I called them, or they actually called me, and I made sure I verified it was legitimately them. I logged in my Walmart account and saw that actually someone had gotten into my account and tried to purchase things from 3 different locations. And as you can see here, that's something that just happened earlier this year, in July the 15th, 2020. There was a class action lawsuit where millions of Walmart accounts were offered for sale on the dark web due to a website vulnerabilities. So Walmart accounts were hacked. So if you do purchase things online, especially if you're purchasing from Walmart, you may not have anybody to use your account yet, but you may be one of the millions whose accounts, not that they attacked your system, but that they got your account from the Walmart servers and systems that Walmart have because of Walmart's vulnerabilities. And my account just happened to be one of those, I guess, that was on the dark web because several individuals were using my account to log in. And for I don't know, laziness sake, stored my card on the Walmart. So when I'm shopping, all I have to do is to check out, confirm the last 4 digits, and hit confirm or to finalize it, and it purchases things. When they called me across on the telephone, they recommend several things. Any place, they told me to first go in there and change all of my passwords for Walmart and any other place that I shop online. They told me any other place that I shop online to remove my card, to not leave the card on the website. They said it's a little cumbersome or a little more tedious to finalize your order, but it makes it safer. So that when someone hacks the account from the store, all they're getting is your username and your password, but they can't have access to your card, or they can't purchase things from the online shopping store if your card is not saved on there. The only way they can get your card number is either from your bank, or whether it's your credit card company, or to place an infected file on your system like a keylogger to get your information. So if that's the case, and they wanted me to scan all of my systems to make sure that it wasn't my computers that was what was vulnerable, what leaked out the information. More than likely, since I found that, I figured it was the Walmart accounts that was hacked, but I did want to make sure that I did a thorough scan of all of my systems. And I let them know that I'm using Linux, and they told me it didn't matter. They still recommend that I scan my system, and they provided me a variety of other things to do, and I will show you this below, that when you scan your system, if you find something and you're not familiar with the terminology, I have some basic terminology for things that you may come across, like phishing, malware, and other things, rootkits. I have a basic glossary here for those of you that may not be familiar with some of the things that you find across the internet. And I did find these terms, majority of them at the McAfee glossary of terms. There's a more thorough, if you click the link here or here, there's a more thorough glossary, but I didn't want to overwhelm you. I just wanted to use some of the most common ones. And here's some things they told me to keep you safe on the internet. I'm not going to go through and read all of that, but in a moment you will see that my ad blocker, it did show up as an infected file, and it removed them from my browsers. Now that's not to say that AdGuard is infected, but you do want to be cautious when installing extensions, because whether you're using Linux, Windows, or Mac, when you install extensions, you're giving that extension permission to monitor and to locate or to look at the contents that you're doing online, which includes when you log into Shop. That extension may have rights to send the data or information back to an extension. So make sure you're installing credible extensions. And it did remove my AdGuard. And later I did some research on every infected file, and I'll show you in a moment. And majority of them came up as false positives. Now, since my account or someone was trying to use my account, I just let it remove everything that it found to make sure my system was clean, regardless if it was a false positive or not. If you don't know what a false positive, you can look in the glossary below. But let me reiterate that Clamscan and ClamTK makes up the ClamAV, which is your Clam antivirus. And like I said, it's for Linux, Mac, and Windows users. It's open source. If you're an Ubuntu user or an Ubuntu derivative, you can open up your terminal. Just simply update your repository by copying this, or go in sudo apt-get update or sudo apt update, then put in your password, let it update your repositories. Then you just simply copy this, right-click copy, paste that in your terminal, press the enter return key, and let it install the ClamAV antivirus program along with this part of the program as well. Now, if you're afraid that the program coming from your repositories of Ubuntu is outdated, then you can either click here or you can click the bit bucket, and you can download, in this case is the ClamTK 6.06, and it will pull in all the other dependencies that's needed for the entire program so that you can install the most current version on your system. I do provide links to documentation and other websites that if you want to do some more checking. But as you can see here, the most current version at the time I installed it was 6.06. Now, once you install it, it does come with the most current version of the program. However, it's not going to come with the most current version of the signature database. To update your database, you're going to have to stop the Clam antivirus program from running in the background. You just simply copy this, open up your terminal, and I'm going to minimize this so you're not looking at two terminals in the background. You paste this into your terminal, you press the enter or return key, put in your password. Once you put in your password, press the enter return key, and you don't see anything happen. All you did was just stop the program from running in the background so that it will allow you to update your definition files. Go back to my website and go sudo refresh clam, and that pulls in the most current signature database. So what you do is you go back to your terminal, paste in that command, press the enter or return key. Now if you look, it says that on November the 5th, and it told the time that I have them already, they're up to date. If for some reason yours is outdated, and if you just installed it, they will be outdated, you'll see a little progressive bar as it downloads and installs the updates, and then it will go back to your prompt. Now, if you're a Windows user, don't get freaked out by using the terminal. If you've ever had trouble with your Windows system, you may have run like check disk or scan disk or something within your DOS prompt. Think of DOS like your terminal. And with DOS prompt, you have a lot of utilities or tools to allow you to work on and fix your system. running a virus scan is kind of like repairing or making sure that something that's going to damage your system, you're fixing it. And you don't have to get freaked out of all the commands. If you look on my website, I do have everything that you can copy and paste. Now, if you do a fresh clam, if it comes up that it's an error or permission error, don't freak out and think, oh my God, it's broke, it's not working. If it does come up with an error message when you're trying to update your database, then just simply copy this. All you're doing is just giving it permission to update that location. So when you installed it, it's recommended that you reboot the system. But if you don't reboot the system, or if you did reboot the system, if for some reason you still don't have permission, right-click, copy that, paste it in your terminal, and press the enter or return key. Now remember, we stopped ClamAV from running in the background, so we now want to start it back. Always make sure if you're stopping it, then you start it back. So open up your terminal. Let me minimize this. Press the paste, press the enter return key, and you don't see anything happen. Now, again, we can check the version. You can come down here and copy and paste this, or you can use your arrow key and move up on your arrow key on your keyboard. And as you can see here, these are the commands that you typed in. There's Clamscan space -- version. You press the return key or the enter key. As you can see here, I updated on November the 5th at 8:24 p.m. and it's 9:49 p.m. So that was the last time that there was an update available. It's not that just because I ran this, it's going to update every time I run it. It's only going to update the most current update since the last time it was updated. And at the time now that we did this, there was no current update. Hope that makes sense. Okay, now since we got it updated, it's now time to actually run the program. Now, here is the man pages. You can click this link here, and it will give you the name, a description, a synopsis, a better description, some options, and look at the number of options. Do not get overwhelmed at all of these options. You know, there's a lot of things that gives you some examples and some return codes, the credits and everything. Don't get overwhelmed by all of that. I'm going to show you a little bit at some of the most common ones. So if you're coming in from Windows or Mac, you don't have to get overwhelmed just because I'm using the terminal. If you want to scan every file on your system and to display all the infected files and to scan every directory and subdirectory, that's what you're using this option for. And if you want to remove every infected file, you can. And let me show you. The sudo, make sure you're giving it root privileges or sudo permission, super user privileges, and you're running the program Clamscan. You're going to say, when you look at this option, infected, only prints out the infected file. So when you're running Clamscan in the terminal, you're not going to see any progressive line go across. The only time you see something popped up is dependent upon what option you've chosen when you input it from the terminal. In this case, is the infected. So it's only going to print out the infected files when it finds them. As you can see here, where it found an infected file, here it said found, and then here it shows you that it removed it. So it's going to remove it if you use it with this command. You're only going to see the infected files if you use this option here. Recursive means it's going to scan all your directives recursively, meaning that it's going to scan the current directory and all the subdirectories and files within those subdirectories from that point. So it will scan your entire system if you're starting at root, which is that term / here. And let me go to my file manager. When I go back all the way to the beginning, look at that symbol. This is the starting point of your hard drive, and all of these are your subfolders and folders. These are your folders, and if I click like this, these are subfolders, and here are more subfolders in that folder. So as you can see here, it's going to take a lot of time to scan every single folder and every file within every subfolder. So it will take a lot of time to scan your computer, depending upon how many files that are on your computer and how large your hard drive is, depending upon how much is on that computer. So in this case, the infected shows only the printed files. Recursive scans all of the files and subdirectories and directories on your system. And by default, as you can see here, yes is set to when I put remove here. I don't need to put braces, yes. Now if I don't want to remove them, I can put the braces and put no. So the default for that is yes. So I put out to be careful when you're putting the remove command, because sometimes there may be a false positive and you remove it, but if you say to display the infected ones, and if you take a screenshot or later you can save your infected files to a file name that you can go back and look at, and that's what I have here. So when I had an infected file, I just took a screen capture. I could have said send it to a particular file and opened it up. So anywhere that I removed a file, if it did turn out to be a false positive and it removed a file that was needed, I could go back and reinstall that particular file. So since my card was recently used, I wanted to make sure I removed everything that this particular program found. So as you can see here, once I scanned my system, and that was put in here, that was where I did the stop, I did the fresh clam, I started it back, and then I did the starting from my desktop system. The first things it started to find was some flat pack infected files. And as you can see, the names of them, which are here, the bc.gif, exploit.agent, and it had a number. I used a search engine online and discovered that many people said that that was a false positive. So I really didn't need to remove those, but in this case I did. I thought if I have a flat pack program that's not working, I can look here and determine which one it is and go back and reinstall it, because I want to make sure that anything that's found from the system is removed. And like I said, I'm screen capturing, so I know what it is to put back. So as you can look here on my desktop, going through, and it took a long time. As you can see here, it's mostly extensions found within my browsers, and they're phishing extensions. So I definitely wanted to remove those, even if they were false positive. When I see phishing, I wanted to make sure that they're gone. And here, as you can see within my Brave browser, and this is my Brave browser here, it basically stripped my extensions out that I had on this particular Brave browser here to where I don't have any extensions installed. Now that's not to say all the extensions in the Google Chrome store is infected. Most of these were false positive. But look at the word phishing. If you're not sure what the term phishing is, I do provide a glossary, as I showed you earlier, that you can scroll down, locate phishing. It's a high-tech scamming technique that uses spam or pop-up messages to deceive people in disclosing credit card numbers, bank account information, social security numbers, password, or other sensitive information, and it goes on to explain a little more. So if you come across something on your system as it's scanning, I do provide a glossary with a lot of common terms that you may see. So in this case, I do have some phishing extensions, and by phishing, it's trying to collect information about me and send it back to them. Now, a lot of extensions do that by definition. It's not saying they're stealing your credit cards. It's not meaning that they're stealing your all the other information. It's just collecting basic information like what version of the browser are you using, what operating system. That way they're collecting that data to improve or to keep continuing it for the type of browser you're using and for the type of operating system you're using. So in a way, they are phishing. But is it malicious? More than likely, it's not. So don't think that everything that you find by phishing, it's just collecting the data on your computer. So don't think that every single one of these are something that's bad. So if you're not sure, I recommend to remove it. So the AdGuard was one that I did have that was said phishing, but you got to remember AdGuard, it also does probably collect the version of Chrome or Firefox or Brave or the type of browser that you put. So technically it is collecting some information. So don't get scared. You might want to look up the number just to confirm that it is a false positive. And if you're not sure what false positive is, you can scroll down and look up false positives, which it comes up as, here it is, a false positive is a result that indicates a given condition is present when it's not, or an email is marked as spam even though it's legitimate. So it may look like an infected file, which may be still a good file. So if you're not sure about something, you can check my glossary below. But as you can see here, on my desktop system, it scanned and it took 2,459 minutes and 16 seconds. That comes out to be around 41 hours of scanning, because on my desktop there's a much larger hard drive. As you can see here, it scanned a lot more data than it did on my HP ProBook, which is my laptop. So if for some reason you don't want to spend 41 hours of scanning out of your system and you've already started the scan, then you can actually stop it by hitting the Control-C. if it's already started, hitting Control-C will kill any command running in the background and within your terminal, and it will stop it. So if you've been using the scanner for like 1 or 2 hours and you realize it's going to take 41 hours, then you might not want your computer to stay on that long. You can kill it. However, if you can let your computer scan for 41 hours, let it scan, and it will come up with a summary here, and it will display something very similar than you see here. And on my desktop system, as you can see, it found 123 infected files. This desktop used to be a Windows operating system that was wiped off and put Linux on there, that I still had my old Windows folder. It just didn't boot up into Windows, and so most of the infected files that it found was within the Windows folder. So I did to let it remove any file that it found in those old folders. Now here's the Pro Book. As you can see, it still found infected files within the Flatpak. It also found like the porcupine fishing within the extensions of my browsers. And when it was finished, it scanned a total of, there's the number of known viruses that was when I updated the database. Here's the number of directories it scanned on my laptop, the number of files that it scanned, the number of infected files. So on my laptop, I didn't have as many infected files as I had on my desktop, but I did let it remove it. Now the arrows. Here you see it had a total of that many arrows. By default, when you're scanning, even though you tell it to scan all the files on your system, and I'll go back up to here, even though you tell it to find file or scan all the files on your system, by default, any file that is 100 megabytes or larger, it will omit, and it will come up and display an error message that it's too large to scan, because by default, Clamscan will only scan files smaller than 100 megabytes. So in this case, if you download a lot of ISO files like Linux operating systems or any large programs, it's not going to scan them if they're over 100 megabytes. In most operating systems like Linux operating systems that you download are several gigabytes. So it will give you an arrow saying it's too large. And by default, a lot of compressed files will not scan. However, if you go and use the options from the man pages, you can override those limitations. Like here, you can say sudo clamscan just a particular file name. And like I said, as long as that file is below 100 megabytes, it will scan it. It says scan all your files from the current directory. As you know, from the directory which is here, you're going to scan all the files. So you're using the -R, which was recursively. So it's going to scan from the current directory. To scan from the working directory, the one that you're currently working on, you just go sudo clamscan. So if you're opening up, let's say, for example, I go to my downloads folder and I want to scan all the files here, I could right click and I could say open in terminal, which is here. If I went and did this particular command here, sudo clamscan, and paste this into my terminal, it's only going to scan all the files that's currently into the downloads folder, if that makes sense. So as you can see here, here's all the files from the home folder and all the subdirectories. Here's all the files and to show the infected files. So you can use the little, instead of typing out the whole word, you can use initials, and you can put the path to your folder. Here you can say scan the files, but don't show the outcome by putting an O instead of I. And here it says scan the file and send the results to a infected file. So you can actually create a file name that puts all of the infected files so you can open up that file to look at anything that it found. In the case if you're using the recursive and to remove, then you can look at the file name to see all the files that were removed and what programs they come from. You can create a files and move them to all the infected files to a particular folder so that you can quarantine them. You can use it for scanning your mail, and here's the man pages. Now when you go to the man pages, you'll see that you can actually create a file size so that you can go, let me click on the man pages. So if you want to exceed the 100 megabytes, you can go and look at the size of them, and this is a different one. You can find it for size, and you can come up here and go find and use the search feature and type in the word size. Here you go. You can say alert them when it reaches a certain size, maximum file size. Here we go. So let me close this out. You can use this extension right here to say scan files and make sure the maximum size of the scan. you can change it. The default is 100 megabytes, but you can go up to 4 gigabytes. So you can say 4 gigabytes here, and it will scan files up to 4 gigabytes. If you have anything larger than 4 gigabytes, there's ways of doing that with other options, but I'm not going to show that because this is a basic for basic users. I don't want to get into that much complication, but you do have options to override things like the default 100 megabytes. You can scan things that are up to 4 gigabytes. So like I said, I don't have everything on this web page. You can click the man page at the top or the man page at the bottom, or go to the website to see more information, or you can enter in man space Clamscan to display all the man pages within your terminal, and you can use the little scroll bar to scroll up and down to look at your options and a brief description of all your options. So if you've someone that recently had a system that you're not sure if it's compromised and you want to do an entire scan, then you can open up, after you install Clamscan, you can update your signature database, and once you update it, go back and start it again, and then you can actually run, just copy and paste this. And like I said, you may not want to hit the remove and remove everything. You might want to screen capture and manually remove everything that it found if you've determined if it's a false positive. But if you're like me, you might want to remove everything from your system, and then if something that you later found out, if it's a false positive, you can go back and reinstall it. So hopefully this video has helped you understand how to use Clamscan, which Clamscan, like I said earlier, is part of the ClamAV, which makes up the ClamTK, the graphical user interface. This is just the command line interface version of the ClamAV. So hopefully this video has been helpful to you, and have a great day.